kind of influence do you feel in your work? I mean, you talked about two of the people that you've worked with that were major influences. Are there other people in the field, maybe more popular influences, that you can sometimes, or not necessarily more popular, I don't expect Stephen King to pop up in your work, but other writers who are big names in science that you sometimes look at and think, oh, I'd like to model after that?
Most of them are probably not well-known names in the general community, but within the neuroscience and psychology fields itself, I have several writers that have written. Steven Pinker is an example of somebody I've read that I think his ideas influence as well as the style of writing. And there are others in science like that, but sometimes it's stealing style. You see something that was really communicated well and say, you know, why haven't I been trying to do that? And sometimes in scientific writing, it's of course the content itself. There are ideas that are out there in science that are related to your own ideas that you want to read about and think about.
Okay. What's your, now you mentioned some other authors, but what's your secret vice of an author or a genre besides mystery? Is there anything that would really surprise people that you read you haven't mentioned?
I don't think so. I think that I used to read Mad Magazine and really liked it a lot.
That's good. Yeah.
So that's I haven't for a long time, but certain comic books, the old Superman and Batman comics, I really used to enjoy. I haven't looked at them in years and years. I haven't looked at Mad Magazine in years and years. But there's a subtle amount of humor in there. And in National Lampoon, when it was published, I don't even know if it's still published, probably not, but that was another, so humor, I guess, in a sick, twisted kind of way.
Okay, good. That's a healthy thing to know. So you've got a couple books there. I'm curious if you'd just like to tell us a little bit about some of the things that you bought.
I haven't read or I haven't published a lot of books. Most of my work has been in article writing, but there are a few over the years. I think in 2003 or so I published this book, which is a handbook of classical conditioning, and I'm sure this is must-reading for everyone. I didn't see it on the bestseller list.
It's
anywhere.
Weird that you must have just looked at the wrong time.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. But the interesting thing about this book is it is really a compilation of all of the methods and techniques that I've used in my lab, and it was co-written with David Lavande, who was a postdoc with me at Stanford many years ago. And this one was a lot of fun to put together because it now serves as sort of the guidebook in the laboratory for not only my students, but students who are in general fields of behavioral neuroscience. This was also a book where the publisher agreed after some amount of discussion to include a CD in the back of it that has all of the figures that are in the book, and so this is pretty easy. Why
include the figures? I mean, what's the
well, there are some of these that are like electronic schematics and things that are probably better to be able to produce just right on your computer screen instead of Xeroxing and doing paper on it. But I thought this was a different kind of writing project. One of the other books that I brought along it's the other type of book that I've been involved in. These are edited volumes. This happens to be an edited volume called Model Systems in the Neurobiology of Associate Learning, which was done in honor of a Festschrift for Richard Thompson, my postdoctoral mentor. And so I was the lead editor with two colleagues on putting this together. Special challenge in making and producing an edited volume, because there are about 18 or 20 or so chapters in here from different authors. So first of all, herding the authors to produce this and get their manuscripts in on time to meet a publication schedule is always interesting. And then most of these are invited, so the editing tends to be lighter than you would do in a peer-reviewed paper. But it was another sort of walk down memory lane in a lot of respect, because of course there are a lot of old collaborators that are in here that worked with Dick Thompson and me and others through the years. So I think this is a good example of editing that we do from time to time. The other thing I thought I would show are a couple of manuscripts in their raw form, and one as a final result. This one I have a particular interest in. This just got published a month ago, and you might not be able to see this, but the title of the paper is Evaluation of Bidirectional Interstimulus Interval Shift in Auditory Delay Eye Blink Conditioning in Healthy Humans. The reason this is of interest is I am the fourth author on this paper out of 5. That's not interesting because I was part of a collaborative team. But my son Adam is the first author on this paper. Adam was an undergraduate at Indiana University and worked with the lead author, Bill Hetrick. Oh, by the way, Bill is an Ohio State University graduate, a PhD from psychology. Bill and I have collaborated for years on work in schizophrenia. So my son worked in his laboratory. This was essentially his honors thesis that is a part of a collaborative project. He's now a graduate student at the University of Iowa in neuroscience, so he's sort of following the same kind of career path that I have. What's interesting about this is editing the work of your own son is an interesting exercise.
How did that go? Was there a moment of conflict there?
No conflict, because again, and it wasn't, we weren't in a father-son mode during this. We were really in this author-co-author sort of mode. So it was no different in a lot of ways than working with a lot of my other undergraduate and graduate and postdoctoral colleagues. What was interesting really was that we weren't in this father-son mode. And it's just kind of bizarre editing your own kid's work. And it isn't for a high school project, but rather something that is now in print in a journal. And finally, the last thing I'll show is I mentioned this review that we just recently published in the journal Neuroscience. This is a PDF of that paper. I think it sort of shows an example. This was the manuscript I showed you is the cover sheet from the raw paper. This is more like what a final product of one of these papers were. This is actually the final PDF of it. So this is the paper that I did with my postdoctoral mentor, Dick Thompson. And again, the enjoyment of writing this paper was tremendous, but it just shows what the final products typically look like.
Okay. Well, Dr. Steinmetz, I really want to thank you for coming in today.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoy talking about writing, and it is fundamental, great importance to undergraduates and graduate students. It remains our main mode of communication, and we have to continue to be good at it. I think society benefits.
All right. Well, from the Center for the Study and Teaching of Writing at The Ohio State University, this is Writers Talk. I'm Doug Dangler. Until next time, keep writing.